Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Girivarada Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Pranamamsa Parivjakacharya Sutra Shri Śrīmad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 7. The activities of King Bharat, text number 6. It's a very long verse. If someone is expert in reciting verses, you can have a crack at it. So, I'll try. What, you want to try? Yeah, what's her name? Priya? She called me and she said she'll be writing half the verse there because it's so long. So I'll try to read it and see what happens. Sampracharatsu nanayageshu virachitagna kriya. What I'll do, I'll just read it and then and you can try after that. But I won't try to sing it. It will be an embarrassment, I think. Sampracharatsu nanayageshu virachitagya kriyeshva apurvam yattat kriya phalam dharmakhyam pare brahmani yagya purushe sarva devata linganam mantranam artha niyamya kataya sakshad kartari para devatyam bhagavati vasudeva eva bhavayamana atma nayapunya mridata kashayo havish advaryubhir grihamaneshu sa yajamano yagya bhajo devam tan purushashya veshvav abhyadhyayat. Anyone wants to try? You want to try? Oh, go for it. Very good. Yeah. Mataji's, anyone want to have a go? No? No one? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That was great. So, synonyms word for word. Sampracharatsu. When beginning to perform. Nana yagyeshu. Various kinds of sacrifice. Virachita anga kriyeshu. In which the supplementary rites were performed. Apoorvam, remote. Yat, whatever. Tat, that. Kriya phalam, the result of such sacrifice. Dharma akhyam, by the name of religion. Pare, unto the transcendence. Brahmani, the Supreme Lord. Yagya Purushe, the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Sarva Devata Linganam, which manifest all the demigods. Mantranam, of the Vedic hymns. Artha Niyama Kataya, Due to being the controller of the objects, Sakshat Kartari, directly the performer, Para Devatyam, the origin of all demigods, Bhagavati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeve, unto Krishna, Eva, certainly, Bhavyamanaha, always thinking, Atma Naipunya Mridita Kashayaha, freed from all lust and anger by his expertise in such thinking. Havishu, the ingredients to be offered in the sacrifice. Advaryubhi, when the priest expert in the sacrifices mentioned in the Atharva Veda. Grihamaneshu, taking. Saha, Maharaj Bharat. Yajamanaha, the sacrificer. Yagya Bhaja, the recipients of the results of sacrifice. Devan, all the demigods. Than, them. Purusha, Purusha Avayaveshu, as different parts and limbs of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. Abhyadhyayat, he thought. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Prabhupada. After performing the preliminaries of various sacrifices, Maharaj Bharat offered the results in the name of religion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. In other words, he performed all the yagyas for the satisfaction of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. Maharaj Bharat thought that since the demigods were different parts of Vasudeva's body, he controls those who are explained in the Vedic mantras. By thinking in this way, Maharaj Bharat was freed from all material contamination, such as attachment, lust, and greed. When the priests were about to offer the sacrificial ingredients into the fire, Maharaj Bharat expertly understood how the offering made to different demigods was simply an offering to the different limbs of the Lord. For instance, Indra is the arm of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Surya, the sun, is his eye. Thus, Maharaj Bharat considered that the oblations offered to different demigods were actually offered unto the different limbs of Lord Vasudeva. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead says that as long as one does not develop the pure devotional service of Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, one must carry out his prescribed duties. Since Bharat Maharaj was a great devotee, one may ask why he performed so many sacrifices that are actually meant for karmis. The fact is that he was simply following the orders of Vasudeva. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Whatever we do, we should constantly remember Vasudeva. People are generally addicted to offering obeisances to various demigods, but Bharat Maharaj simply wanted to please Lord Vasudeva. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram 5:29. A yagya may be carried out to satisfy a particular demigod, but when the yagya is offered to the yagya purush, Narayan, the demigods are satisfied. The purpose of performing different yagyas is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. One may perform them in the name of different demigods or directly. If we directly offer oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demigods are automatically satisfied. If we water the root of a tree, the branches, twigs, fruits, and flowers are automatically satisfied. When one offers sacrifices to different demigods, one should remember that the demigods are simply parts of the body of the Supreme. If we worship the hand of a person, we intend to satisfy the person himself. If we massage a person's legs, we do not really serve the legs, but the person who possesses the legs. All the demigods are different parts of the Lord, and if we offer service to them, we actually serve the Lord himself. Demigod worship is mentioned in Brahma Samhita, but actually the shlokas advocate worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. For instance, worship of the goddess Durga is mentioned this way in Brahma Samhita 5:44. Shrishti Siti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharta Durga Ichhanurupam api yasya cha cheshtate sa Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Following the orders of Sri Krishna, the goddess Durga creates, maintains and annihilates. Sri Krishna also confirms this statement in Bhagavad Gita. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. Bhagavad Gita 9:10. We should worship the demigods in that spirit. Because the goddess Durga satisfies Krishna, we should therefore offer respects to goddess Durga. Because Lord Shiva is nothing but Krishna's functional body, we should therefore offer respects to Lord Shiva. Similarly, we should offer respects to Brahma, Agni and Surya. There are many offerings to different demigods, and one should always remember that these offerings are usually meant to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bharat Maharaj did not aspire to receive some benediction from demigods. His aim was to please the Supreme Lord. In the Mahabharata, among the 1,000 names of Vishnu, it is said, Yagya Bhug, Yagya Krid, Yagya. The enjoyer of Yagya, the performer of Yagya, and Yagya itself are the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the performer of everything, but out of ignorance, the living entity thinks that he is the actor. As long as we think we are the actors, we bring about karma bandha, bondage to activity. If we act for yagya, for Krishna, there is no karma bandha. Yagyātat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds one to this material world. Bhagavad Gita 3.9. Following the instructions of Bharat Maharaj, we should act not for our personal satisfaction, but for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 17.28, it is also stated, Ashradhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asaditi uchyate partha nachatat pretya no iha. Sacrifices, austerities, and charities performed without faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead are non-permanent. Regardless of whatever rituals are performed, they are called asat, non-permanent. They are therefore useless both in this life and the next. Kings like Maharaj Ambarish and many other Rajarshis who are pure devotees of the Lord simply pass their time in the service of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee executes some service through the agency of another person, he should not be criticized, for his activities are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. A devotee may have a priest perform some karma kanda, and the priest may not be a pure Vaishnava. But because the devotee wants to please the Supreme Lord, he should not be criticized. The word Apoorva is very significant. The resultant actions of karma are called Apoorva. When we act piously or impiously, immediate results do not ensue. We therefore wait for the results, which are called Apoorva. The results are manifest in the future. Even the Smartas accept this Apoorva. Pure devotees simply act for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the results of the activities are spiritual or permanent. They are not like those of the karmis, which are non-permanent. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.23. Gata sangasya muktasya jnana avasthita chetasaha yagyaya charata karma samagram pravaliyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. A devotee is always free from material contamination. He is fully situated in knowledge, and therefore his sacrifices are intended for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmantamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiret. Before reciting the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the conclusion of this verse is only worship Krishna. No demigods, no human beings. Because Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and we are parts and parcels of Krishna. Bharat Maharaj was performing various yagyas in the previous verse. You heard that Bharat Maharaj, he performed various yagyas. So Bharat Maharaj performed these yagyas for the satisfaction of the demigods, but they were offered to Krishna or Lord Vishnu. So Krishna says, Yagyarthat karmano anyatra, loko yam karma bandhana. All yagyas and bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, or in other words, all yagyas and tapas, all austerity. Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary. All these yagyas, they are meant for, ultimately they're meant for Krishna's pleasure, and they're meant to be offered to Krishna. So yagya can mean not only a fire sacrifice. Sometimes we see in the temple, fire sacrifices are performed. Or those who are from India, you're very familiar with yagyas. Probably you have been through many yagyas yourself, as in the form of samskaras, or certainly you have gone to the Vivaha Yagya. You might be in the Yagya yourself. So in this way, we have participated in various Yagyas. And so sacrifice doesn't only mean a fire sacrifice, but sacrifice can mean anything we are sacrificing, something we are sacrificing, right? And but everything is meant to be offered to Krishna. So a mother caring for a child is also a sacrifice. And that's an austerity as well. So like if one is doing one's job, going to uni, that is an austerity. So all these austerities and sacrifices are meant to be offered to Krishna. And as Prabhupada says in the purport, either you can do this directly or you can do it indirectly. The best is if we offer these sacrifices directly to Krishna. That is the best. But because Bharat Maharaj, his occupational duty, he was a king. His job was, he was a king. That was his occupational duty. So as a Rajarshi, his duty is to encourage the citizenry, encourage the citizens to be Krishna conscious. That is the primary duty of a king or a prime minister or a leader. Their primary duty is to make people Krishna conscious in some way or the other. So the heads of state today have forgotten this primary duty. They're simply, all they're worried about is creating jobs for people. So that is their main concern, how to create jobs or how to engage people in employment so they don't create a disturbance. But in the Vedic times, or in the Krishna conscious king, was his main concern was how to engage the citizens in Krishna consciousness, directly or indirectly. That was their main concern. So because Bharat Maharaj was a king, in the context, this is going time immemorial, this Bhagavatam, these Leelas. So in that context, the people were following the Vedic system. So because people were following the Vedic system, they were engaged in demigod worship. So at that time, people were very, very pious, and they believed in the Vedas. They accepted the Vedas as the forms of knowledge, as the ultimate authority of knowledge. So because they accepted Vedas, and Vedas, they recommend worship of demigods. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter, from me these demigods have come, and the various sacrifices are performed, and they reciprocate by giving the basic necessities of life. So the Vedas recommend the worship of demigods they recommend the worship of demigods for people who want certain results, right? In the 4th chapter, 4th or 5th chapter, it is mentioned, Kangshanta karmanam siddhim, 4:12, Yajanta iha devata, Shipram hi manushe loke, siddhir bhavati karmaja. That men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. And as a result, they quickly get the results of their fruitive activities, or of what they worship for. So because everyone in this, all of us in this material world are conditioned, and we're always thinking, what's in it for me? All of us think like that. Anything we approach, we are thinking, if I do this, what will I get out of this? So we approach any activity with that mentality. And because in those days, people were pious, they accepted the Vedas, but because they're still conditioned, they approached the Vedas with that mentality as well. What will I get if I approach the demigods? The consciousness of the conditioned soul is to enjoy separately from Krishna, is to enjoy sense gratification, enjoy the senses separately from Krishna. And the mentality of the conditioned soul is rebelliousness of Krishna, rebellion against Krishna. So because they were pious, they accepted the Vedas, and therefore they performed demigod worship to achieve prosperity. So that means people were actually quite advanced than today, than the current civilization. In the current civilization, there is no, at least in the West, there is no demigod worship, acceptance of demigods. People might engage in some kirtan, like these days kirtan is becoming very popular. And most kirtans, people are chanting names of various demigods and Krishna, and it's all a hodgepodge. It's a melting pot of names. You go to a kirtan, and one time, I think it was Rath Yatra many years ago, at the Katani Gardens, and I was sitting and listening to some of those kirtan players, and they were not devotees. So then they asked in the crowd, what should I sing? And then somebody in the crowd shouted, Shiva Shambhu. And then suddenly, Shiva Shambhu Kirtan started, and there was names of Durga and different demigods. I've never heard this before. And it sounded quite funny, to be honest. And so they were chanting these names of the demigods without any understanding. So these days we hear, in the West, most people don't know about demigods, let alone worshipping them. The mainstream population doesn't know. And those who know of some demigods, they know through chanting in kirtans. But their understanding is it's all one. Whether you chant Krishna's name or you chant, some demigod's name, it's all one anyway. It doesn't matter whose name you chant. And you can chant in any fashion. Sometimes you hear them chanting the Maha Mantra, but they chant it the other way around. So Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. They chant it the other way. But these mantras are chanted as we receive them through the parampara. So demigod worship was recommended in those days to elevate people gradually, to bring them to the point of Krishna consciousness. And Bharat Maharaj, because he was a king, he had to encourage people to perform demigod worship. Of course, he preferred they took up directly to the path of bhakti, but not everyone would take up to it or could take up to it. And because we all are independent, we have free will, we cannot force anyone to do anything. And there's a saying, a man is of the same opinion. What's that? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, something like that, right? So we have our free will. Everyone has a free will, and you cannot. It's very difficult to change someone's mind. People act as they want to. So Bharat Maharaj could not. It was difficult for him to. It's challenging to take everyone directly to the path of Krishna consciousness, though that's highly desirable, and because most people won't do it. So, and in that context, people accepted the Vedas, and he encouraged them to worship the demigods, because in the worship of the demigods, Krishna is invoked. So when those yagyas are performed, in those yagyas, the Supreme Lord is invoked. And in fact, if those yagyas are performed properly, the beneficiary of those yagyas is Krishna, is Vishnu. So in that way, people get benefit. And they're gradually uplifted to the platform of Krishna consciousness in a gradual manner. But in Bharat Maharaj, in his personal life, he was not attached to these yagyas. He was engaged in various devotional activities in his personal life. And so when he was performing these yagyas, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he was not desiring anything. He was not desiring any material gain. As I had mentioned earlier, that when people perform yagyas, especially in India we see, and now in Melbourne we have a big Indian population. Sometimes on Facebook you see an ad, I'm looking for a priest to perform, mostly, what ceremony is it? Forgot the name. Housewarming, and there's another one. Sorry? No, not that one. No. Mundan, yeah, these are quite common also, but there's another one. I forgot the name. Satyanarayan Puja, that one. So you see, people put an ad on Facebook, I want to do this puja or that puja. Especially in India, worship of demigods is still common. It's still prevalent. You go to India, in Calcutta, Durga Puja is very common. Different parts of India, different kinds of pujas or yagyas are very prevalent. So people still worship the demigods. In the West, it's nothing, which is a good thing. In India, first you have to undo this. Those who are preaching in India, this is a hurdle for people, an obstacle. They have to, undo that and then teach them Krishna consciousness. But in the West, it's good because people don't know anything. So it's a blank slate. You can teach them directly. So the Sankirtan Yajna, the best Yajna is the Sankirtan Yajna. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Kalau nasti, eva nasti, eva nasti. Eva gatir anyatha. So in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting of the holy names. Chanting of the holy names and chanting of the holy names. So this is the Yajna recommended by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Is the Yajna of the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. So in Kali Yuga, and this is the best Yajna to perform. And in this way, we can directly worship the Supreme Lord. So just as Bharat Maharaj, he performed these yajnas not for himself, but for the people, and that was the context. Similarly, when Prabhupada, he inaugurated the Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan in 1970s, I believe, early 1970s. So when Prabhupada, he had to perform the inauguration. So the day before the inauguration, they did a big Harinam, and they took the small deities all over Vrindavan to announce that the next day, Krishna Balram temple is being inaugurated, and to invite everyone. So the next day, when as the temple was being inaugurated, Prabhupada understood that if he did not perform a yajna, then the local residents of Vrindavan, the local people, would think that this is all bogus. Because people, they think especially for a temple deity installation, you have to do a yajna, otherwise this is unbona fide. So to satisfy them and to establish the temple, to establish the authority of the temple, so people take the temple seriously and come there and get purified. So in order to do that, he invited the local brahmanas. Prabhupada invited the local brahmanas and even brahmanas from South India. So he invited brahmanas from South India and the local brahmanas. He got them to do the yajna, a very elaborate yajna. It went for many, many hours. But Prabhupada told his disciples that the real yajna is the 24-hour chanting of the Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada got the devotees to engage in kirtan 24 hours. And as that yajna was being performed, in the foreground, the kirtan was being performed. So Prabhupada said that is the main installation of the deities. And the inauguration of the temple is the chanting of the holy names. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. So they did this, and even today in Vrindavan, if you go to the Krishna Balram temple, the kirtan is this 24-hour chanting of the 24-hour kirtan is taking place, and it's been taking place for many, many years. This 24-hour chanting is very special over there. You can go anytime, and you can just sit down in kirtan and absorb yourself. So Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, they emphasized that the chanting of the holy names is the best type of yajna. So we don't need to do any other yajnas. And all other yajnas are secondary. Even in the performance of deity worship, the Maha Mantra is chanted. These mantras are chanted. And when we engage in Krishna consciousness directly, then that leads to purification of the heart. So, but even if one performs demigod worship, as is mentioned here, if one has the correct understanding that the demigods are the limbs of the Lord, then if one is doing that worship, then one can still get purified. And in that consciousness, Bharat Maharaj had these yajnas performed. He did not personally perform these yajnas. He had priests, as mentioned here. He had priests who were performing these yajnas on his behalf. So, but Bharat Maharaj, he understood that these yagyas are, these demigods are various limbs of Vishnu. So in the universal form, in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes a universal form. And these demigods are various limbs of the Supreme Lord in that universal form. So here Indra is, I think, explained as the arm of the Supreme Lord, and Surya is the eye of Krishna. So demigods, the demigods are not the Supreme Lord. One of the 10 offenses in the chanting of the holy names is to consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva or Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the holy names of Lord Vishnu. So the demigods are not Krishna. The demigods are not Krishna. They're not independent of Krishna. They are the limbs of Krishna. And they're not equal to Krishna in potency. Nitya Nityanam. They are the parts of Krishna, just like we are the parts of Krishna. So the demigods are the empowered agents of the Supreme Lord for the administration of this universe. And people who are foolish, they take the demigods to be one with Krishna. And in that way they perform namaprad. But the demigods are actually are limbs of Krishna, and the demigods are pleased when Krishna is directly worshipped. They are not offended when Krishna is worshipped. Just like you might approach, just like if you serve the cops, you are serving the government. Right now, there are so many cops are sitting on the border of Victoria and New South Wales because of the hard border closure. So, and the police, because they're not used to such emergencies, they don't have enough tents. And the police don't engage in such large-scale logistics. Usually the army does. The military is prepared. They have entire transport corps to deal with such situations. So when the cops were told to go on the border within hours' notice to enforce the hard border from midnight, they didn't have enough tents, they didn't have enough cooks, they didn't have enough water and facility. So they had to take their own swags, some of them. So what ended up happening was people were serving them. The people in the local towns, they were doing seva. So they were serving the cops. So in that way, they're serving the government, right? So by serving the police, they are serving the government. And the police is not the prime minister, right? By serving the police, they are serving the premier. Indirectly. So in just a very crude example. But the police is not the premier, or the police is not the DPC, Department of Premier and Cabinet. They are the police. They are meant to administer law and order. And certainly they cannot think, because they are receiving all these benefits, that they are in charge. They are simply agents of the government to administer the law. They don't make the law. They simply enforce the law. So in the same way, the demigods are empowered representatives to carry out the administration of the universe. So when they are satisfied, then they reciprocate by providing the basic necessities of life, like air, water. Like at the moment, there's a drought in Australia, right? There's a shortage of water. Why? Because there's no yajna being performed. So back in the day, people had the understanding that if they perform yajna, they will get the necessities for sense gratification, and in the future they'll get a better body. So they were future conscious. They were not just in the now. So the current mentality is just in the now. Whatever makes me happy right now. Most people don't think much about the future. Right? They don't think about saving or the future. Everything is now. Whatever can make me happy right now. But before, people were conscious about the future. So in the present context, there's scarcity because there is no yajna being performed. That's why there's scarcity of water, there's scarcity of food, there's scarcity of various metals, etc. As mentioned, that when yajna is performed, there is plenty of mercury, lead, all these metals. There is plenty air, good quality air, water. Right? These things are in abundance. So if we perform yajna, then there is no scarcity, there is no shortage. And scarcity is also due to mismanagement. So two reasons: due to mismanagement and due to lack of performance of yajnas. So these are some of the benefits of performing yajnas. And if we don't do it, then we are a thief. Because we are not acknowledging the proprietor of everything. So the proprietor of creation is Krishna. And when we don't acknowledge Krishna through the performance of yajna, so the chanting of the holy names, then we are more or less a thief. And we're taking items for our own enjoyment. And then we are liable for karma or reactions, whether they are good or bad. So through the performance of these simple activities of chanting, hearing, doing some service, whatever it may be, these activities are yajna. This is yajna. Yajna is not necessarily a fire sacrifice. By these angas of bhakti, we are performing yajna. And in that way, we are free from karma. And we elevate our consciousness. So the demigods are not offended when these yajnas are performed for Krishna. Sometimes the demigods, they forget that they are subservient to Krishna. Just like Indra. Indra, one time he forgot that he's subservient to Krishna. So it was a custom and tradition for the residents of Vrindavan to yearly offer a sacrifice for the pleasure of Indra. So because they understood if we satisfy Indra, we will get rain. And the residents of Vrindavan, they understood that the beneficiary is the Supreme Lord. But as a tradition, they were doing it for the satisfaction for Indra, but they knew ultimately it's being offered to the Supreme Lord. So Krishna, he told the residents of Vrindavan, he convinced them that through various arguments, they don't need to perform this yajna for Indra's satisfaction. In fact, Krishna said, you offer this yajna to Govardhan Hill and to me and to the Supreme Lord. So Krishna stopped the performance of that yajna, and Indra was infuriated. He was very offended by that action of Krishna. He said, look at these foolish residents. They have accepted, they're listening to a young boy. They've lost their mind. And their discrimination, they're listening to a young boy. So Indra was bewildered. He forgot the position of Krishna. And then he tried to destroy them by annihilating Vrindavan through a thunderstorm. So he sent the Samvartaka clouds, and there was a big downpour, very heavy rain, maybe category 10 storms or category 20 on just another level. So there was a big storm, and there was inundation, and Krishna lifted the Govardhan hill with his pinky finger and asked all the residents to take shelter under that hill. And they all took shelter, and no one was harmed in the least. And to Indra's embarrassment, nothing happened to the hill as well. Everything was intact. Usually you see with the category 5 storm, like in the US there was a big storm. In Queensland we get these storms all the time, category 3, category 4. It leads in widespread destruction. Trees are uprooted, buildings are destroyed. But the Govardhan Hill, nothing happened. Everything was intact. So no damage in the least. And that was very embarrassing for Indra, humiliating. So Krishna taught Indra a lesson, and through that he also instructed us that we should not worship the demigods. Sometimes as devotees, those who are from India, you might have to go to some yagyas, which are performed by your family members. But if we go to these yagyas and think that this yagya is being performed and this demigod is a limb of Vishnu and it is being offered to Krishna, in that way we can be not affected by that yagya. So, I'll stop here. If you have any questions or comments on what we discussed on this verse.
In the Bhagavad Gita, in verse, in chapter 11, Krishna says, among the various five Shivas. So, how do you explain
Among?
that? In chapter 11
Yeah.
of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, among the various five Shivas. So, how do you explain that verse in the context of what you just explained?
Among the bhutas, I'm Rudras, yeah. So yeah, Krishna, is that 11th chapter or 10th?
I think it's
11th, okay. So, he's highlighting his opulences. I believe that's chapter 10. Might be wrong. Might be 11. Okay. So, he's highlighting his opulences, and Lord Shiva has a special place. He's not a jiva, nor he's Vishnu. He's in between. So Lord Shiva has a special place. So the demigods are jiva tattva, and the supreme Lord is Vishnu tattva, is Krishna. And he has Krishna possesses all the qualities, the 64 qualities, is it, of the Supreme Lord. Whereas Shiva, I think, how many does Shiva possess? 60 or 56? Something like that. Yeah, 56 qualities of Krishna. And the Jiva possesses a certain number in minute quantity. So Lord Shiva has a special place, and Lord Shiva also has his own realm in the spiritual realm. So that's why Lord Shiva is in his own category. He's neither the Jiva or neither he's Vishnu. But still, we don't worship Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva still is classified as a demigod. And Lord Shiva is for those, specifically very merciful to those living entities who are in deep ignorance, right? So, and those living entities who are in ignorance, they, like the bhutas, etc., they are very attracted to worshipping Lord Shiva. He attracts them. and gradually elevates them to the platform of Krishna consciousness. And Lord Shiva himself is a devotee of Krishna. Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. He is the greatest devotee of Krishna. And there's so many pastimes of Lord Shiva in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, where he worships Lord Krishna. So yes, therefore we don't worship Lord Krishna, but we certainly respect him, right? And in fact, we respect all demigods, as mentioned in the purport here. When if you happen to go to a demigod temple, one can offer one's obeisances and one's respects, understanding that they are the limbs of the Lord. And similarly, Lord Shiva is also part of Krishna, but is in his own category. And therefore, he is to be highly respected. And we should not see him on the same level as Krishna, because he has 56 qualities of Krishna. He doesn't have all the qualities of Krishna. Therefore, he's not the Supreme Lord. Yes, Prabhuji. No? You were touching your hair. Yes, Prabhu. At the back. So how do we maintain a consciousness that we are doing the activity for Krishna's pleasure? Well, it comes through practice. So the first step is to do it for Krishna. Just like you're a householder, you're doing all your duties. Generally, a householder performs they go to their job. If you ask anyone why you're doing your job, they say, I'm doing my job for my kids, right? Generally, that's what you hear. I'm doing it for my wife and kids. So in that way, they are thinking of their kids. So if we do that activity, so when we start that activity, you're naturally thinking, if I do this, I'm doing it for the pleasure of Krishna. So if we stick to doing that activity for Krishna, naturally we will come to that realization that we are doing it for Krishna's pleasure. In the beginning, we might be 50-50 or not even there. Theoretically, we have read, we do this activity, it's for Krishna's pleasure, and then we start doing it. But as we keep doing it, we get purified, and by practice of doing it and by practice of thinking, I'm doing it for Krishna, then one will start to think like that. Just like if one is doing a fruit offering or one is cooking, if you stick to it, then you will think, I'm doing it for Krishna, right? That realization will come in due course of time. And that offering, if you're cooking an offering, it is going to Krishna directly. So you know it is going for Krishna. So if we are doing our job, that might be a little hard to connect it to Krishna, but if we are engaging the results of that activity for Krishna's pleasure, then it will help us to understand we are doing it for Krishna. So if you are engaged in business, you engage the results of your business activity, the profits, to maintain your family and to share Krishna consciousness like you do. You do programs sometimes above your shop. So you're using the results of your activity for Krishna, for preaching, right? For sharing. And if we engage all the results, not only some of them, but if we try to engage all of them, then the more we engage, the more we will come to that realization that I'm doing it for Krishna. So not only some, but all of it. And that takes time to do it. No worries. Yeah.
No, what is namaprad?
What is?
Namaprad?
Namaprad. Namaprad means to commit offenses against the Nam or the holy name. So there are 10 offenses which you might know. Do you know those 10 offenses? Yeah. Yeah. So if you pick up the songbook, there's 10 offenses against the chanting of the holy names. So when we commit those 10 offenses, the result of those committing these offenses is we don't get Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam means we don't develop the pure taste, or we don't develop pure love of God, or we don't chant the holy name purely by committing the Namaprad. So the first stage is the Namaprad. The first stage in the chanting is the Namaprad, and as we are getting purified, is Namabhas. So the Namabhas means is the clearing stage, is the offenseless stage, and then that leads to Shuddhanam. That leads to chanting of the pure names. And it might take a long time to reach Namabhas or Shuddhanam, and one has to be patient. Anything in life we do, anything great you want to achieve, it requires patience. It's not overnight. So if one might think, I'm doing this for 3 months, 6 months, I haven't got a result, so it's not working. Or 1 year, I'm not getting any result, therefore it's not working, I'll give it up. But one has to, this is a lifelong commitment, because we have been in this material world since time immemorial, and our conditioning is very, very thick. The conditioning is very thick, and because our conditioning is so strong, it requires repeated chanting of the holy names in the association of devotees. As you're doing in the association of devotees, if we continue chanting, and yes, we will be committing Namaprad. All of us are committing Namaprad. At least I am. So, but if we stick to it and try to overcome it, then we will make progress, and should not get discouraged. So we should be aware of what those 10 offenses are. If we're not even aware, then how will we overcome them? Right? So the first step is to know the enemy. So half the battle is won when you know the enemy. When you can see the enemy, then you know where to shoot. So if you know the 10 offenses and what they mean, and then by the engagement in the chanting of the holy names, even though they might be chanting we are probably committing every 10 of those offenses, whether we realize them or not, to various degrees. But if we stick to it, we can overcome it. And as it says, by attentively chanting, I'm guilty of that. By attentively chanting, it's easier to overcome all the other 10 offenses if we are attentive to the chanting of the holy names. So that's what Namaprad means. Yep, just 1 second. If anyone else has, let's see with others. If no one else has, you can ask. Hare Bol Prabhu.
Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly.
Yep.
So every little endeavor that you make, because Krishna will reciprocate that. You just have to be appreciative of that.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. Krishna is very merciful. Whatever endeavor we make to serve him, as Prabhu said, Krishna reciprocates in manifold. Yeah, thank you.
That's why it's wonderful.
That's why it's wonderful, one of the qualities, yeah.
When I'm doing book distribution, so I notice like some people are mentioning Upanishads or some other Vedic literature, and one guy mentioned the Hare and the Ishvara. Like, how do I keep the focus on Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita when people are kind of thinking about these other things?
So you're saying when you approach people, people bring up some other literature?
Only two people that I've met.
So they bring up other literature. How do you sell the literature you have?
Yeah, how do I focus on Bhagavad Gita and Krishna?
Okay, yeah, it's not easy to convince people in such a short time span. That's number one. It's very challenging. The environment is challenging on the street, so I can sympathize with that. It's not easy. And then people are fixed in there. They've already decided what they want on top of it. Well, you can just tell them that the Bhagavad Gita is the Gita Upanishad, is the cream of all the Upanishads, right? And the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Upanishads. And even the Isha Upanishad, Isha means supreme, right? Isha. Prabhupada explains in the, I think, introduction to Isha Upanishad, that this Isha Upanishad is the chief Upanishad amongst all the Upanishads, and it contains the essence of all the other Upanishads. So you can tell them like this: if you read these books, you'll understand what all the other Upanishads are about. You don't need to read each and every one of them. You can tell them, we don't have time. How much time you have to read? You have probably, maybe you have kids or you have a job. Where's the time to read? And you don't, all the hard work has been done for you. It's translated in English, and the person who has translated is coming in the line of teachers. So it is an authorized commentary. So you are getting, and it is explained in an easy to understand way. You don't need to decipher it yourself. All the work is done for you. So you can just read this book. You can try like that. Then, ultimately, if they want to buy, they'll buy. If they don't want to buy, you can't do much about it. just move on to the next person. Thank them for the time and maybe invite them, give them a card or something, and you can judge whether to do that, and just move on to the next person. Move on to someone who will actually buy it and read it. So yeah, you can try, but don't waste your time too much. They can tell you. The experts are there. What do you say, Divija? What would you do?
You sound like an intelligent person.
Like someone. Sorry?
You sound like an intelligent person.
Okay.
You should use that.
You sound like an intelligent person. Yeah. Yeah. So you can maybe say that and say, you're missing out on so much. What about this? You're missing out on the cream. Read this. And maybe you can share your realizations of reading it, how you've benefited. Something like that. What would you say, Madhavi? Okay. What would you say?
Depends really on the person.
Yep.
I always try to connect how they benefit from reading the book. Usually that's what I do. I see everyone react and then how they can benefit. And I try to keep it short and sweet. And then I don't try to convince them on the street.
Yep.
Like some people are ready, I just give them a book. They didn't do anything. They just take it, give money, they're happy. And then some people are just not ready yet.
Yep.
So just give them some nice pacifying words and then maybe next time.
Yeah. Yeah, so as he said, just keep it short and sweet, and don't give a lecture. Yeah, correct. And and be enthusiastic, as he said. So in sales, the principle is they buy you, not the product. And that's very true in the selling of books as well. So they buy your enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness. That's what they're buying. If you are enthusiastic and happy, then they want to be like you. And they think, if I buy this book, I'll become like him. Because that's what you're saying, right? This is what has made me happy. And if you can demonstrate through your conduct, your enthusiasm, and then they buy that. They try to buy the product. Or if they don't buy, then as he said, leave a favorable impression and move on to they might meet someone else. I think last week, I was on the street with Dvija, and he was a few blocks away. And I met this guy. What was his name? Maury or something. I can't remember. South American guy, I think, isn't it? Anyway, I met him and I stopped him. He said he received Hiding in Unnatural Happiness in New Zealand, and he's read it. He's read half of it. And he's working so much that he's so tired. So I said, you just need to sleep for some days. He looked very tired. I showed him a Bhagavad Gita. He said, no, I don't want it. I'm so tired. I said, just go and sleep, and maybe we'll catch up when you're rested. And then, so he left in a favorable, it was a favorable dealing. He left. And then he walked 2 streets up and he bumped into Nikeshari, who, to my amazement, sold him a Krishna book and Bhagavad Gita. I don't know how he did it.
I saw him, and then he told me, I will tell you the same thing that I told the other guy over there. I told the same thing that I told Nanda. And then he told me his story, how he worked so much, how he's tired. And I was like, yeah, just listen. And then I said, okay, so, looked at him, looked at me. Then he said, so, which book you got? And then I showed him the book, and then he took one for himself, one for his mother, and it was.
So he got purified by your association. He bought your enthusiasm. So if we leave a favorable impression, then it makes someone else's life easier. Right? to sell a book, right? It makes their life easier, and it leaves a favorable impression, and then they can take up to Krishna consciousness. So even if they don't buy a book, you don't need to shove it down their throat, or just end on a favorable note. And then maybe in the future, this country, that country, or this year, that year, they might encounter a devotee and take it further. So he started off in New Zealand. He told me some monk gave him a book, Hiding in Unnatural Happiness. And then I approached him, and then he sold him 2 books. He's left his details, so hopefully he'll take it further. So it's not about selling a book also, it's just about ultimately selling a book to make them a devotee, right? So if we keep that end game in mind, then that's how you can approach it. All right, any other? It's 9 o'clock, we'll end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Go.